So maybe you're somebody last season who had the wherewithal to draft Tyrone Tracy, draft Bucky Irving on your teams, and have two of the best rookie running backs on your fantasy football team in 2024. But if you weren't that guy, and maybe even if you were, I have three rookie running backs in 2025 that are set to break out and have league winning upside for you in this video. When it comes to these three rookie running backs, I like where they're being drafted, I like the situations they were drafted into, and I like their outlook for this coming season. So the first for me is going to be RJ Harvey, who was drafted by the Denver Broncos. For RJ Harvey, he really only has to beat out Jalen McLaughlin because the departure of Javonte Williams going over to the Cowboys. When it comes to looking at RJ Harvey, his tape is kind of wild. He did play for UCF, so it's not like he played for one of the biggest schools in the SEC. But looking at some of the teams that he did play during the season, I was very impressed at the tape, was impressed with the stats. We do know how much Sean Payton loves to use his running backs as pass catchers out of the backfield, vis-a-vis Alvin Kamara in 2017. Kamara did end up finishing as the RB3 in his rookie season with the Saints and with Sean Payton as his head coach. RJ Harvey is a little bit more of a banger in between the tackles, who can also catch the ball and break those catches for big yards after the catch. Very similar to Alvin Kamara. I just don't think Alvin Kamara was as much of a big body guy in between the tackles. A lot of people out there are saying that they don't like his size. I actually, again, looking at the tape, there was a lot of plays where he got lost behind the offensive line and was able to break bigger runs for more yards because these DBs, safeties, linebackers were not able to see him behind these towering offensive linemen. We're going into year 2 of Bo Nix with Sean Payton as the head coach. They did add Pat Bryant as a wide receiver for this team. They added Evan Ingram. They have Cortland Sutton. The Broncos have a top 5 offensive line. I did also like for RJ Harvey that at UCF, he lined up in Wildcat quite a few times. So I like that versatility for a Sean Payton offense. He did throw a couple passes, used to be a quarterback, I guess, back in the day in high school. So it will be interesting to see how Sean Payton utilizes him in all aspects of this offensive unit. For me, there's a real reality where we see RJ Harvey in that Taysom Hill Swiss Army knife role, that joker player that he was talking about, because I think he has the ability to line up as a wide receiver, potentially throw the ball a couple times during the season, line up in Wildcat, and be the primary ball carrier for this football team, who again is going to be a top 10 scoring offense in 2025. I think you're getting a guy who's going to come in. It may take 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever it is for Sean Payton to really dial it in for RJ Harvey. But as we march closer and closer to our fantasy football championships, you're taking a guy who you're picking as RB24, so the bottom of an RB2 range. It's not like you're drafting him as an RB1 or as a high RB2. You're taking him later in your drafts with a guy who, by the time you get to your playoffs, I truly, truly believe has the potential to be a fringe RB1 guy in fantasy football, especially depending on the matchups. If we get good matchups going into the actual playoffs, he is somebody who could win your fantasy football championship in 2025. So next on the list for me is going to be Caleb Johnson, who was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I know Jaylen Warren is still on this team, but with the departure of Najee Harris, this team is going to be looking for a big-bodied, quick, between the tackles, breaking tackles, running back, similar to how Najee Harris was when he came into his rookie season. Now, the biggest things that I think Caleb Johnson has going for him, he is a bigger-bodied running back, much more similar to how Najee Harris was, in contrast to Jaylen Warren, who it kind of just seems like they don't want to make the feature back on this team. Considering that the Steelers picked him in round 3, it's pretty high draft capital for them, so I imagine he's going to be the week 1 starter for this Pittsburgh Steelers team. One of the big things we know about the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin is they love to pound the ball and play really good defense. I anticipate with the signing of TJ Watt, or the re-signing rather, or extension, however you want to phrase it, it means that they're going all in on their defense. I do like the addition of Aaron Rodgers. I know a lot of people are really down on him this year in fantasy football. I'm not saying you should take him in fantasy football, but through the last 6 to 8 weeks of last season with the Jets, it looked like Aaron Rodgers kind of shook the rust off and kind of came more alive. So this team should score more points and be in better scoring opportunities. At the combine, he didn't look that fast or explosive, but watching his game tape, he does have some breakaway speed. He does have great contact balance, and he doesn't look like he's that slow. There was a handful of examples of him outrunning cornerbacks, linebackers, and even safeties. So I would anticipate that his speed is not really going to be as mediocre as a lot of scouts at the combine believe that it would be. So I think that is a huge upside and a big plus for him going into next season. If we're looking at a similar workload to what Najee Harris got in his rookie season, the primary running back for this football team, a team who wants to pound the ball consistently, a guy who's getting a lot of touchdowns in the red zone from goal line carries, there's a realistic scenario where you're getting Caleb Johnson later in your drafts. He's even going later than Harvey, obviously. He's someone who's going as RB28 currently in your drafts. You're getting a guy who you're taking as a RB3, a mid-round RB3, who realistically by the end of the season, if he gets the workload that Najee Harris had in his rookie season, could end up being a solid RB2 for you. So it may not be as much of a crazy upside as what we saw out of Harvey based on his draft position, but he's still someone who I think is being undervalued in fantasy football drafts. He's going pretty close to Jalen Warren as far as ADP goes. That doesn't make as much sense to me based, again, on the fact the Steelers don't really seem like they want to plug him in as the 3-down back for this team. I do love taking people whose ceiling is going to be, I don't say dramatically, but significantly higher than where he's actually going in your fantasy football drafts. For me, Harvey, Caleb Johnson, and the next guy I'm going to talk about, you've got to be taking one of these 3 guys in your drafts to have a guy who's going dramatically later than where he probably is going to finish in 2025. So next on my list, I have Trayvon Henderson playing for the New England Patriots. Watching Trayvon's tape, he was very explosive, very fast, very involved in the pass game, which I think is going to be a great fit for this New England Patriots team. Obviously, situationally speaking, I think it's going to be fantastic. You're going to have elevated play out of Drake May, who I think is going to take a dramatic step up in 2025. You have the addition of Stephon Diggs, who I think is going to be the wide receiver 1 for this football team. They drafted Kyle Williams, who I think is probably the most underrated rookie wide receiver in the draft this season. The other big thing, too, is they elevated their offensive line play. They brought in Mike Vrabel. So overall, the outlook for the Patriots is going to be dramatically higher than it was last season. Mike Vrabel is going to want to play a lot of defense, and he's going to want to pound the rock a lot. Obviously, they still have Ramondre Stevenson on this team. The big thing for Ramondre, though, is that they kind of scaled back his production last year. They kind of reduced his touches. He wasn't being quite as efficient. He was turning over the ball at a pretty high clip, so they kind of removed him for a couple of the games or weren't playing him quite as much. So I don't think there's going to be as huge of a target competition or carry competition on this team between Trayvon and Ramondre. It wouldn't surprise me if at the beginning of the season we do see them splitting more touches, but as the season goes along, I anticipate seeing Trayvon take over this backfield and being more of a first and second down back for this team. I can see Ramondre taking some of his goal line work away just because he is a bigger bodied running back for this team. With Trayvon Henderson's draft capital being drafted in round 2, probably, like I said, splitting touches with Ramondre, he's somebody who's going as a running back 2, early running back 3 in your drafts. He's somebody who has a ceiling of being a high-end running back 2 in fantasy football. They're going to pound the rock a lot. They're going to have more of a league average scoring offense this coming season for the Patriots, which means that there's going to be a lot of touchdowns to go around that weren't there last season. Holistically speaking, Trayvon Henderson is another guy who you should be thinking about drafting in every single draft you do this coming season. My recommendation is between Trayvon Henderson, Caleb Johnson, and Harvey. You've got to snag one of these 3 rookie running backs in your fantasy football drafts. They're all going as RB2s or later in your drafts, which means that you're able to get a guy who realistically is undervalued for what he's going to be able to bring to his respective football team in 2025. You don't have to spend the high draft capital like you do on Ashton Genty or Marion Hampton, which allows you to have more flexibility and more security in your early round picks versus taking somebody who's going early like those 2 players who you're not 100% certain if they're going to perform at that draft capital and pay it off. With these guys, you're pretty dang certain, you feel pretty comfortable that they're going to be the lead backs on their teams. There's only 32 lead running backs, so they're probably worst case scenario going to finish as A fringe RB2, RB3, that's where you're drafting them. So you're drafting them right around where their floor actually is. They have the potential to be breakout running backs this coming season. And again, for me personally, I'm going to be trying to draft 2 of these guys if I can. But at the very least, I'm going to be making sure that I get one of them every single draft that I do this coming season. If you're wanting to see my rookie wide receiver breakouts video, it's around here somewhere, just so you can have an idea of which wide receivers I think that are going into their first season in the NFL who have a chance to have crazy high league winning upside and are going to break out in 2025. Hopefully this video helps you get us a little bit closer to winning your fantasy football championship in 2025. Hopefully I'll see you guys again. No, hopefully you guys will see me again real soon. Until then, y'all have a blessed day. Bye.